So if you take it
It is officially 5 o'clock now, so I'm going to go ahead and call our public meeting for our tax hearing to order. And item number 2 on the agenda is public comments for proposed rates. But Scott, I do think it would be a good idea for you to maybe explain what you received.
So up on the screen, you'll see a presentation of the tax hearing. This is a very detailed state required regulation of how we go about doing this. So on July 27th, I received a notice based off property assessment for our options were for tax rate. Last year, our rate was 59.2 cents per $100. So we have a couple options. Compensating rate would be 56.8. A 4% increase actually is 59.0, which lowers it by 0.2 cents while generating new revenue. And a subsection 1 is a 69.1, which generates over $900,000, but it is subject to recall. Okay. If you look at the rates over the years, can you go in a little bit more, please? So if you look there, our rate, of course, the nickel tax was passed in 2016. We're on the 17-18 tax roll there. So you see that increase from the 54.5 to 60 at that point. The nickel is not exactly 5.0, it's a formula, roughly 5.5 cents. So then you can see we've been steady to 60 and dropped it down to 59.2 the last 2 years, prior years. One thing I'll point out real quick before you go, if we take the recommended 59, if you want to take the nickel tax off, go back a little further. If you want to take the 59.0 and take the 5.5 off the nickel tax, you're actually back lower pre-nickel tax on the base, okay? Look at that. The 2 other columns there are total tangible, and that's going to match your property tax rate. The other one, motor vehicle tax, we've always been 52.6 since 2013-14. The next page is talking about kind of what happens with the tax rates. Whatever already set by the board, 11 cents of that will go to the building funds. It's restricted, so we're required to put that nickel tax plus the base into the restricted funds. That does come off the top before any operations. For example, last year we had 59.2, so 11 cents went in the building, and 48.2 cents for $100 goes to the general fund for operations. Senior citizens do receive a homestead exemption of $40,500. That changes every 2 years. That just changed, so they get to take that off the top before they start paying taxes. So they don't pay on the first $40,500. And the end of the farmland is at a rate lower than fair market value. We'll go on. This is the assessment map that the PBA uses. They're required every 4 years to rotate and to reassess home values. They just finished a green in 2021 and be moving over to the eastern side of the county there in the pink in 2022. So they will go through all those areas and reassess any values, current trends, and then also each year any new builds go on as well. This right here shows you what happened from that PBA assessment the last year. They increased the total assessment value for Marion County by well over $117 million, or 8.1% over prior year. That's why we can lower the rate and still generate more revenue. That's got to do with, includes your new builds and increased property value assessments. The next slide will show you the blue is Marion County, what our rate has been over the past since 03-04. versus the state average. And you can see when we went to 60, kind of flat line and dropped back down to 59.2. So we're still below the state average across all school districts. The next slide, the blue is going to show you what our base tax rate is, and then any additional nickels are in red. And that's for all school districts that touch us, both county and independent districts that border Marion County. The average nickel is 5.74, we're at 5.5, and in the general fund, the average is 61.3, and we're at 53.7 on the average. So we're below there. The next one, Mr. Lyons going to talk a little more about this. This is our average daily membership, which is when it returns to enrollment. This graph is kind of extreme. It tops out 3150, drops down to 3012. It's a big extreme there, but just to know our formula for enrollment is a huge part of how our income is. We want to stay steady or be inclined. So, and then COVID has definitely, like everything else, impacted how we calculate and what we use for our everyday attendance and those kind of things. And the last thing is just a few items to identify what we're trying to do in the district to be good stewards of our funds. You know, we have a very active energy management program. We do a lot of things in-house that we used to contract out, like the security system and card entry. We have students working on our Chromebooks instead of outsourcing that. Our nursing services has been a huge savings to our district. The way we do that now, always seeking grants. Ms. Wheeler and her staff have done a great job in food service. There's no charge to our students, but yet we're still increasing that budget as well. Mr. Lyons and his staff are always looking at technology, and they switched over to a Spectrum service instead of all these different phone lines to save us money there, as well as how they work on their servers. Mechanics, the bus garage, we purchased tools a few years ago where they can do more stuff in-house versus having to send big jobs out. They just didn't have the tools, and then we're always trying to use this smart purchasing. What do we do to make the best of our funds? Any questions about any of that as far as, and again, my recommendation would be to do the 59.0 tax rate and 56.2 for the motor vehicles.
And just for everybody out there, the 59 tax rate is going to lower the individual tax rate for taxpayers in Marion County. Yes.
You're correct.
Want to say that again?
Absolutely. Our tax rate actually goes down, and the nickel tax is included. We've had a few phone calls. One thing I'll share with you all is, you know, start off saying how strict this is and what process you have to follow. We put our ad in the paper the first time. It's been in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks. In the transition of some management to Love Enterprise, that ad got kind of lost in the shuffle. That was an issue for us because it kind of restricts what we can do if we don't do the right thing. So working with KDE, some of you might notice we got phone calls about our postcards sent out to each individual. That met the requirement of the notification of this public hearing. Of course, that was a lot more expensive sending out an individual postcard versus the enterprise advertising for 2 weeks. I got a phone call today. The enterprise is issuing us a credit with them for the difference of what it costs to do the postcard versus the ad. So we have we'll be utilizing that as a savings as well, and though we wouldn't only have that expense. So that's great. But the other thing it did increase the number of phone calls here as people were getting those cards asking, and they were asking the questions: is the nickel tax included in this rate? And answer that issues. And then they wanted to verify they were reading it correctly, that it's actually going from 59.2 to 59.0, because they're not accustomed to tax rates. I made a lot of new friends I've never met on the phone. So just a little background on why the postcard is traditional. That's not the way that we do it, but in order as our only option with the hiccup to printing. Any questions? Anybody in the audience want to say either?
Kim, did anybody sign up to speak?
I was the two that came in want to speak, I'm not sure.
Did either any of you out there want to speak on the tax hearing portion of the meeting, or are you waiting until later?
I'm just here about the tax.
Yeah.
You're adding another tax. I understand that it's for the, with school buses and whatnot.
I'll explain that. So on your postcard, explain that it's not a new tax, sir. It's the same rate. Last year, the rate was 59.2. per $100 from your property.
Right.
The proposed rate they've adopted tonight is 59.0, it lowers it 0.2. What we have to identify is any new revenue, where that money's gonna go. So we broke it down to plant maintenance, instruction, and school buses. So it's only identifying where those monies are going. It's not a new tax, it's actually lowering the existing tax from 59.2 to 59.0. So it's not new. That makes sense? Okay, thank you.
And the reason for the postcard was just because there was a miscommunication amongst the newspaper, because normally it's published in the newspaper. And they've taken new ownership, so it didn't get published. So we sent it out to everybody to make sure that they're aware of it. So.
Any other comments on that portion? Okay. Yeah,
I make a motion to approve.
well, we don't have to.
Oh, we don't have
The
to
only
do it?
motion at this point is to adjourn.
Oh, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll say.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned until 5:30.